Hello folks, I'm Alex. This is Alex Unabridged, and this is the new way I'm going to be rating books going forwards. So welcome back to the channel if that is the case. Yes, new year, new rating system. So last year I started using just the 5-star system really to rate my books. You know, I'd kind of used that on Goodreads, and then when I switched to Storygraph, I continued using that. But I'm going to move from the 5-star to an out of 10 system. And the way that I come up with that overall score out of 10 is a little more complex than my previous system. So that's what I'm going to go through today. I'm changing the system really for my own benefit more than anything else. It's to kind of encourage myself to think a little more critically about the books that I read. Star ratings are a little too limiting for that. I end up kind of judging a book more on kind of like what does it feel like? kind of, you know, sort of scheme, if you like, if you can call it that. And with less consideration on things like the elements of writing craft and storytelling and stuff like that. And because I'm trying to write myself, I kind of feel like I need to just pay a bit more attention to those sort of things in books. And I think by changing the rating system and kind of, you know, kind of forcing myself, making myself pay attention to that as I read, and, you know, as I process the stuff after reading it, that might help with, you know, how I kind of get a grip on what I think of as good, enjoyable writing and not. So yeah, the new system aims to kind of combine a bit of both in terms of, you know, a critical response to the writing, as well as an emotional response, because that still is really important. The enjoyment, this is, you know, reading is a hobby. The enjoyment is still a really important component within how I rate something, what I feel about it, and how I explain that to other folks. So the system details then. As I was researching, you know, possible other rating systems that were out there, see if there's something out there that's suitable for my purposes before I go making up one of my own. That's kind of, you know, always the way to start, I think. I came across the CAWPILE system, which was created by Book Roast. Links to Book Roast channel and some of the CAWPILE videos in the description. Great channel, go check it out. And CAWPILE looks at character, atmosphere, writing, plot, intrigue, logic, and enjoyment. So 7 categories, essentially, 7 different elements for each book that you read. And you score each one out of 10. And then there is a fantabulous spreadsheet created by Book Roast, which you can pop all these numbers in for the different categories. The formulas are already in there, and then it will convert that aggregate out of 10 score to even a 5-star rating. So you can pop it on Goodreads, or you can pop it on Storygraph, things like that. So I will be using the spreadsheet that is provided, because it's fantastic. It's not just for ratings, it's for logging all of your books and book details and everything, and it's great. It's a really well thought out spreadsheet, and it'll, you know, create all of your data and charts and all that kind of stuff. It is impressive, I have to say, for spreadsheet geeks like me. But yeah, that system, it's not quite what I wanted. It's not quite right for my purposes, but I have adapted it slightly. So I have slightly edited the formulas, and I have got 1 category less, so mine is 6 categories. So mine is CAWPILE, basically. But full credit goes to Book Roast for the, you know, original system of CAWPILE and the inspiration that I got from that, and for this fantastic spreadsheet, as I say. So go check out their channel and their videos. So my system, this applies to fiction only at the moment, including comics and graphic novels, although there's a slight change in how I look at those within there. I'm still coming up with a system that will work for me for any non-fiction. It'll also be an out of 10, and it may well be also based somewhat on the CAWPILE system for non-fiction. But it's not, I don't read much non-fiction, and I need to mull on that and perhaps even read some non-fiction some more before I kind of settle on what I want to do in terms of how I rate those. So we'll come back to that at a later date when I've actually read some non-fiction. I can kind of do a little bit of experimentation. So for the moment, this is fiction only. So my 6 categories, as I say, it's CAWPILE. So the first one is the C, and that is the character. So for this, I will be thinking about, you know, how memorable were the characters, both the protagonist and any of the secondary characters. Were they, you know, important to the story, or were they kind of, you know, a vehicle for the first character's progression, essentially? Did I care about the characters? Did I care about what happened to them, whether it be that because I disliked them and I wanted them to, you know, meet their downfall, or because, you know, I loved them and I wanted them to succeed, etc. Were they flat, one-dimensional, or did they feel very much like real people? Could I get a good idea of their personality, who they were, what their motives were, all that kind of stuff, how they fit in the world? And did they act in accordance with those motives? Were their motives clear? Did they, you know, 3/4 of the way through the book have a personality transplant and do something completely out of character? That kind of thing. So it's not just, you know, the kind of the good things, but also some of the potential pitfalls that you might find with character work in a book. Okay, secondly, we've got atmosphere or world. So how immersive was the world? Could I picture it? Was it well described? Was it evocative? Could I put myself in that world and the setting, characters, creatures, whatever might be in there? Were any of the rules established for the world clear? This applies often, this will apply obviously to science fiction quite a lot. This will apply to horror, where you've got fantastical stuff, magic realism, anything like that, fantasy. Not that I read a huge amount of fantasy, but were the rules for this society, for this world, clear, and were they broken at any point? And was the world building sufficient? Was it clear? As I say, did it give you a good sense of what it was to be there? Could you transport yourself into that world? Was it too much? Was there too much info dumping about the world? Did it feel overwritten, overthought? Okay, writing for the W. So in comics and graphic novels, this is where this will be slightly different. This will be split between writing and art. So this 1 out of 10 will be kind of divided into 2 sets of 5 essentially, and will be graded on the writing and the art separately. Because in comics, I quite often find that I will really love the art, but not be so enamoured with the writing, or vice versa. So I think it's fair to split those. So writing, did I like the style? Did I enjoy the style of the author's style? Was the prose right for me, right for the book, as in terms of, you know, was it unique? How clear was the author's voice, basically? Was everything easy to follow? Was it readable? Was it accessible? What was the dialogue like? Was the dialogue believable? Was there enough of it? Was there too much of it? What was the ratio like with the dialogue versus the prose? How much of a flow did it have? Was the rhythm pleasing? Was the word choice pleasing? Things like that. Did the tone of the writing fit with the story, this type of story that it was? And, you know, based on all of that, would I want to pick up something else by that author? based on this style, even if it was from a very different genre. Okay, P is for plot then. So this will look at things like pacing. Was it well paced? Were there any parts of it where it dropped off a bit and it became a bit of a slog, a bit tedious, a bit too slow, you lost interest? Was the overall plot satisfying? Was it worth the time, basically? Were the reveals worth the journey? Was the plot unique, or was it a little bit too derivative? Did it surprise me? Was it too complex or too simple? Were there any glaring plot holes, inconsistencies, things like that? Then we've got I, and this is where my system changes a little bit. My I is for ideas. So this will take into account things like the actual, the overall concept of the book, even kind of regardless of the execution of it, the actual overall concept of the story. Also the themes of the book, did they come through clearly? Were they unique or approached in a new way? Or was it not really saying anything that hasn't been said before in an old way, basically, in an already done way? Did it make me ponder anything strongly? Did it challenge me to ask questions of myself, my own perspective, opinions, or to think about the themes, motifs, etc.? Has the author left too much unclear or unexplained within it? Did the plot, character, world, etc. fit properly, feel right for the concept? And if it's genre fiction, which is often what I read, just to think about whether whether the book is a good example of the genre. And then the final category is the same as in CAWPILE, which is enjoyment. And this is, did I enjoy the book overall? Was my enjoyment consistent throughout? Was it compelling? Was it engaging? Or did it feel like a little bit of a slog to get through it? How intriguing was it? Did it hold my attention throughout it? This one's the overall emotional kind of category, if you like. This is very much doesn't matter how basic, simple, whatever you want to call it, some of the other elements might have been, or how, even if they were actually poor in some stages. If it was a rip-roaring, fun, silly time, even if the writing was a little bit mediocre in parts, if I really had fun with it, then the enjoyment score is going to be higher. So it accounts for things like that. So yeah, because I love trash, and some trash that I've read has not been the best writing in the world, but it's been bloody good fun, and I've really enjoyed it. So it's important to have that enjoyment factor in there. So those are the 6 categories that I've got for fiction and comics and graphic novels. As I say, each of those will be scored out of 10, and then that will be tallied up and divided by 6, and that's how we'll get the aggregate score out of 10. That will then be converted, for my own purposes, to an out of 5, a 5-star rating, basically, so that I can just log it on Storygraph, things like that. So that is the new system. I'll be using this going forwards from now on, basically. Now I've cleared the kind of the December reads, the December reading off the list. Anything that I've been reading in January is being assessed based on this new system. I'll give a breakdown of the scores for each category in reviews, so you can see how I've arrived at the overall score when I do them. So that's pretty much it, I think, in terms of my explanation of how I'm going forwards. Do let me know in the comments if you think there's anything I've overlooked. I've tried to kind of come up with something, as I say, that kind of takes into account most of the main things, but I may well have missed stuff. So, do let me know if there's anything else, like in terms of, you know, sort of the things within the 6 categories, you know, about the sort of questions that I'm asking within that category. If you think there's something that I've omitted, then, you know, do drop me a comment down below, and I'll certainly consider adding stuff in if I think there's a glaring hole in my assessment criteria, if you like. So yes, that will do, I think, from me today. This was just a quick overview of the new rating system and why I'm doing it. As I said, this is pretty much for me more than anything else, so that I'm encouraging myself to ask these questions as I read, but largely kind of, they'll be in the back of my mind, but it'll be kind of more after I finish a book. I'm going to get into the habit of, as soon as I've finished a book, the next day, once it's percolated a little bit, just to go through this kind of scheme and think about it and make that rating, and then just sit with it a little bit, you know, before I kind of confirm it, if you like, because things do alter over time and you do need time to process what you've just read. So yeah, I'm still going to continue reading the books for enjoyment. I'm not going to be trying to take a very academic kind of way of, you know, or intellectual, critical way of actually reading the thing at the time. It's more to kind of just have these things in mind, and certainly immediately after the fact of finishing the book, that's when I'll really kind of start to talk, to think about it and start to process that stuff. Because I don't want my reading to become an intellectual critical exercise. I read for enjoyment. But as I say, I could do with being a little bit more critical in my response to the stuff that I do read. So, right, I'll stop rambling for now. Thank you very much for watching, folks. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please do consider giving me a like and subscribing for more content coming very soon. But from me, for now, that's ta-ra.